Well, hello again, YouTube. It's been a while since I've posted a video, and I'm in the middle of a project, as you can probably tell by the condition of my shop. And I've built this neat little mortise jig for my router, so I thought I'd share it with you. I have one more cut to make on the stool project I'm working on. So what I'm going to do is route 2 half-inch mortises in the last leg of the stool. And after I do this, I'll disassemble the jig, share it with you, and I'll share with you the link to the original blog where I got the idea. It may look confusing right now, but I assure you that I'll take this thing apart and explain everything I've done. Alright, and there we have it. 2 half-inch mortises, hopefully in the right place. Okay, so let's take this thing apart and see what we've got. Alright, so let's look at this thing in more detail. Router's unplugged. The whole thing rides on these 2 nylon bushings. Okay, these are 1/2 inch by 1/4 inch tall nylon bushings. Come in a little hard to find parts bin at Lowe's. And they're held in place with these machine screws. I've heard these called bugle head screws, whatever. Point is that the head is kind of flared. And the importance there is that the more you tighten that screw, the more it'll kind of spread out the spacer. It has a little bit of give to it. So, when you route these 1/2 inch slots, these 1/2 inch nylon spacers or nylon bushings aren't quite tight. So you can take your screwdriver and just snug them up, and they expand just a little bit so that when you put them back in the track, there's no lateral movement. There's no play, only side to side, and it glides like it's on rails. I've waxed the top with paste wax. I've waxed inside the slots, and the whole thing moves pretty nicely. Okay, so this particular template, this top, is a removable template. You can make as many of these as you want to fit on this base, and we'll look at that. This particular one is for a 1/2 inch diameter bit, so a 1/2 inch by 3 inch mortise. And the length of the mortise is dictated by the space between these guys here and how much meat you leave between these 2 tracks. Alright, so the max travel, this thing's going 3 inches. That's what I wanted for these stool legs. So you can see that the mortise lines up 1-to-1 with that. If I only wanted it 2.5 inches, 2 inches long, I could put some stop blocks here on the side to limit the side-to-side travel with the router. Okay. In the original, these tracks are cut from the ends. I can see why. It's easier to do it that way. But I was kind of concerned that I wasn't leaving as much in the middle as the original creator of this jig did. He had a slightly different router. Maybe my bushings are a little closer together. And so I can only leave about an inch of space in the middle to get the desired width mortise I needed. So I decided to drill these oversized holes and then, chop out the meat with a jigsaw and then clean it up at the router table with a 1/2-inch bit. And so these bushings still ride in the small portion of those slots. So these big holes only serve the purpose of me routing those slots, nothing else. And I did that so I could leave these edges on so it wouldn't loosen up over time. And so let's put this up to the side. Let's take the top off. I got lucky that the size of these bolts, the Allen heads on here, are the same size as on my Delta planer. So you guys with Delta planers recognize this tool. So it's always kind of handy. So this top slides off. Okay, this is the replaceable part. You can make it for 1/2-inch like I've done here, 3/8, quarter, whatever. Okay, just as long as this part here is still 1/2-inch and corresponds to your nylon bushings. Make a bunch of tops for a bunch of different router bits. Now the only thing that I didn't realize up front that I probably did wrong is I used 3/4 inch for this top part. And what that does is that severely limits the depth of the mortise you can create. So I would suggest probably using 1/2-inch or even 3/8 inch plywood so you can get some of that depth back. I didn't have a problem because my 1/2-inch bit's pretty long, but once I go to use a 1/4-inch bit, I'll probably want to use thinner plywood so I can get some of that depth back. So this is the base of the deal. Now you can kind of see what's happening here with the clamp, how this clamp system works. Right now it's just the bolt that I'm having to use this wrench with, but at some point I'll make a knob. So let me show you all the parts to this. Got this kind of clamp here. I've got 2 of these, and I've got 3 possible holes that I can mount these in. And behind this in my workbench, I'll show you in a sec, there's some clearance holes drilled so that this can go all the way through. And this bit here is just temporary. It's just an offcut from another leg held on by double stick tape. So when I'm done, take that off, boom, not a problem. This is also temporary. This little strip here just registers my leg level. Okay, it's not really necessary. I just felt better with it there. I held it in place with 23 gauge pins. These will pop right out. No problem. I can pry that off. You'll never see the nail holes. So this whole base held to the bench, just 2 screws, so I can put it back on the shelf. So behind this guy I've got 3 T-nuts for my clamping. I've got a couple of T-nuts in the top to hold these bolts. These also came from Lowe's. They're called connecting bolts. Okay, so these are 40 millimeters long. They'll work for the range that I need, anywhere from 3/8 inch to 3/4 inch plywood. Okay, and you can see the clearance holes I've drilled. Put this back in place. Stick that back. So what was going on underneath, you saw me stick the leg under there and then kind of slide it over. So I've got a couple of registration marks I made in pencil, which I can now erase, not a problem. So I'd slide it up to this registration mark, tighten my clamp down, route it out. Take the clamp off, flip the piece around, slide it over to this registration mark, clamp it in, route it, done. Just that easy. Once you get the layout, this jig seems pretty quick to use. So got a lot of adjustability for the different size workpieces you can use. Talk about the clamping. The reason I put 3 holes, whenever I'm going to go on the edge of a workpiece like I did with these, I plan to just use the center clamp. Now, if I wanted to route a mortise in the end of a workpiece, of course the strip wouldn't be here. Put it like that. Now I'm covering up my hole. So now I can come at it from the side with a couple of clamps, or maybe just one clamp, or a wider piece, a couple of clamps. And of course I'd have an offcut of the same thickness double sticked over here. Alright? For whatever reason, on my clamps, which I've also leather faced, just on one side just to keep from marring the work, for whatever reason the bolts weren't threaded the entire way, so I bought a whole bag of them, different sizes, so I'll always be ready. So be sure to check out the original blog post for more construction details, his thoughts behind how this works. He's also got a different base. He built 2 bases so that he could take the template to the workpiece. For example, I've got some pretty stout legs here that I'm going to make a workbench with, and I've hand chopped the mortises. But say I wanted to take, make a series of 1/2-inch mortises in this. It's not really going to work for me to stick this guy up here. So he's made a deal that he can take the template to the workpiece. Okay, be sure to check it out. It's a great idea. You'll see some other good stuff there. So let me know what you think. If you leave me a comment, I'll be sure to reply as quickly as I can, answer any questions, offer any more construction details, anything you guys need to know.